Parents skipped my graduation to throw a party for my sister, who dropped out when grandparents found out they were funding her, while making me take loans. They cut them off. So for context, I 22 meters. Have an older sister, Jackie, 24F, and she has always been the little princess of the family. She was supposed to graduate from college last year, but unfortunately she couldn't make it. It was not the college that kicked her out, even though she totally would have deserved it, since both her grades and attendance were pretty low. But instead, it had been her own decision to drop out of college in her last year, so she could pursue music, her one true love apparently. She had joined a band with a couple of her friends from college in her second year, and that had been going strong, but honestly, we all knew that it was just a phase, and it was a terrible idea to quit college over that so she could pursue her dreams of being a rock star full-time. But I did not say anything about it because I did not think it was my place to say anything, and more importantly, I don't think that Jackie would have appreciated me having opinions on her life anyway. The people who should have said something and warned her against doing such stupid things ended up encouraging her to quit college so she could become a musician and play gigs with the rest of her band. She was an amateur bathroom singer at best, and that was the biggest difference that she had with the rest of the band members. The rest of them actually happened to be good. I don't even know why they had her in the band in the first place. But anyway, within 6 months of her and all the other 5 of her bandmates dropping out of college so they could take the music career seriously, she was dumped from the group because they had found another vocalist who was definitely much better and even wrote her own lyrics. That had been a huge disappointment for her, and she moved back home with no degree and no future prospects. She tried to start a band of her own, but nobody was interested because none of her friends were musicians, and people were not stupid enough to leave their lives and plans so they could follow her whims and fancies of the moment. Ever since she got dumped from the band, she has been unemployed and has been living off of our parents' money at their house. I think it's pretty weird that my parents are actually supporting this, because they think that she has gone through something really terrible and deserves a break, because I, on the other hand, think it's just the consequences of her own actions, and I don't feel any sympathy or pity for her. She should have had realistic expectations from herself as a singer, and I'm also pretty sure that in the band that she had joined in college, all the other bandmates had been friends with each other since high school, so of course they were a lot closer to each other than they were with her. Also, I think it's really unfair that they are allowing her to sit at home without paying for anything, because it clearly means that they are supporting her financially, even though she's obviously a grown person now. The reason I think it's unfair is because when I had graduated high school, they had told me that now that I was no longer in school, I was on my own and I would have to make my own way through college. It didn't come as a surprise to me, since I knew that they had even made Jackie pay her way through college, so I did not expect any preferential treatment. Also, by then, I had realized that my parents had a favorite, and since it was not me, I was prepared to pay my way through college with student loans, or by working. But then, when I realized that they were just letting Jackie stay with him rent-free, I realized that they were ready to support her, even though she was an adult and always kept making excuses for her unemployment and unwillingness to get a job. It started making me think about how differently they treated both of us and how unfair it was, so I confronted them about it. And we even had a lot of fights over this, but they would always kind of emotionally manipulate me and get their way afterward, so I had been finding it very hard to cut them off. But then about a week ago, they finally gave me the perfect reason to let them go. Last week I asked them to attend my graduation party, which is taking place in a couple of days. My campus isn't very far away from where I live. It's just 2 hours away, and it'll be very convenient for them to attend. But they started making excuses about how they did not want to come because they had work, and I found it really weird because obviously they could take one day off from work to attend their son's graduation. So I started arguing with them, and eventually, they told me the real reason that they didn't want to attend, and it was because they were throwing a party on the same day for my sister. Coincidentally, the day of my graduation was the day that my sister was supposed to graduate last year, but she never got to do it because 8 months before her graduation, she had decided to drop out, and she had been quite down in the dumps recently because of that. So, in order to make her feel better about everything, they had decided to throw her a party, but she didn't know about it yet. So I thought that they could still postpone it and attend my graduation ceremony instead. I expected them to do that because that would have made sense. But instead they told me that they expected me to understand why they couldn't attend and why they had to be there for Jackie on that particular day. I was actually in disbelief that they were even considering skipping my graduation, just so that they could throw some stupid party for a grown woman who had made a bad decision and now she had to live with it. I did not like their decision, and I had already been having a very hard time dealing with my parents, so I just ended up having a huge outburst on the phone call with them. I accused them of never caring about me and always prioritizing Jackie over me, and I told them that even now, they were creating a terrible situation for both of their children. By never pushing Jackie to do better in her life and always coddling her, they were making sure that she never made any progress, and by pushing me away in favor of Jackie, they were making sure that I never trusted them again. I told them that they were terrible parents, and even then, they did not seem apologetic and just told me that I was overreacting because it was just my graduation, and it was fine if they were not there because it was obvious that Jackie needed them more. I did not see any point in talking to them anymore. So I just hung up and I decided to call my grandparents up so I could ask them to attend my graduation instead. My mom's parents live out of state. So, we're not very close with their family, but I'm reasonably close with my dad's parents. They are the ones who helped me take out a student loan and even became co-signers for me, because I didn't even want to ask my parents. My grandparents have always been well aware of the fact that I don't really get along with my parents and have always been sympathetic toward me. They have even tried to explain to my father several times that the way they treat me and Jackie so differently is really unhealthy and unfair, but it's never made a difference to them. However, for me, it's always meant more than. My grandparents have at least bothered to try and stand up for me, and that's why I've always had a good relationship with them. So, if my parents were not willing to attend, I would obviously prefer for my grandparents to be there. So, when I called them, I explained the entire situation to them. And I was really upset, so I ended up crying. They could tell that I was really torn up about all of this, and started apologizing to me for letting me down, even though I kept telling them that this was not their fault. But it was clear that my grandparents obviously felt really bad about what I was going through, and after a while, they started reassuring me that they would be there for me at my graduation and also told me that they would make sure that my parents paid the price of making me cry. Not just this one time, but so many, literally almost uncountable times over the years. I could tell that they were serious, because they actually sounded furious, and I tried to get them to tell me what they were planning on doing. But they told me that I would find out eventually, and so I had no idea what they were about to do until I heard it from my parents. Later that night, a little after 1 a.m., my dad called me up and immediately started yelling at me, telling me that I was selfish and unreasonable, and told me that I was being a drama queen for no reason. I had no idea what he was talking about, so I had to tell him to slow down and explain what was going on, because I genuinely had no clue what had happened. At first he refused to believe me, and told me that I was putting up an act of being innocent. But then he finally told me that a couple of hours ago, a little after I'd made that phone call to my grandparents, they had shown up at my parents' house and had a showdown with them. And it had not been pretty, because apparently, my grandparents had called my parents leeches of the highest order and called Jackie a brainless and lazy cow. It was a bit harsh, but it was pretty valid of them, because ever since Jackie had dropped out of college, my grandparents were the ones who had been supporting her by sending money to my parents every month. My grandpa has his own business, and is definitely better off than my dad, and he had always taken advantage of that until now. When my grandpa finally decided to put his foot down, because he could not allow this to continue anymore. My dad had apparently been telling my grandparents that Jackie was trying to look for a job, but she just couldn't find anything that she wanted, which was a total lie. I knew for a fact that Jackie hadn't been looking for a job at all, because every time I would go home, all she would do was just laze around at home, or go drinking with her friends. She was not interested in getting a job or working hard, and my parents knew that, and they were fine with that. But they knew that my grandparents would not be fine with it, so they had been lying to them. And after the conversation with me, I guess, my grandparents decided that they were not going to put up with this anymore. I'm pretty sure that they had already figured out before me that Jackie had no intention of getting a job anytime soon, because she was being taken care of by her parents, and she didn't feel the pressure to go out of her way to do something. So she was completely content living off of other people's money. Later on, when I spoke to my grandparents, they explained to me that even though they knew that Jackie had no intention of getting a job, because it was obviously very unlikely that even in almost a year she hadn't been able to find a job, they had still been helping her out by sending money to my parents every month, because she was still their grandchild, and also they did not want my parents to suffer for her anyway. After my father told me that my grandparents had shown up at their house and told them that they were putting an end to this nonsense now, and they were not going to be sending any more funds to my parents anymore, they told me that I needed to talk to my grandparents and fix this, because it was my fault for making a big deal out of the fact that they were not going to show up to my graduation. Then my dad made the mistake of mentioning that instead of sending money to my parents, my grandparents planned on sending money to me from now onwards. And that's when I hung up on my dad and immediately called my grandparents to find out what was going on. They picked up almost instantly, and when I asked them if it was true that they were actually going to be sending me money every month now, they told me that it indeed was true, and it was their way of trying to make up for everything that I had been through. In the past, they told me that I had been through enough, and after I graduated, I deserved to have an easy life in whatever I did with the money. It would be my decision, but they just wanted me to have it because they wanted to support the right person. I felt kind of strange about it at first because I intended on getting a job and working after I graduated, like normal people do, but then I decided that I was going to agree to my grandparents' proposition, because why not? I did not have to put myself through difficulties to be happy. Even though I was entitled to be happy, and my grandparents were offering to help me out, I was not gonna reject that. So I happily agreed to whatever my grandparents were saying. And after that, my parents kept trying to call me. But I did not feel the need to answer them anymore. Even Jackie had been trying to get in touch with me. But the next morning, when I found out that my phone had been flooded with messages and missed calls, I decided to block them all, because I really didn't want anything to do with them anymore. All of them had just one thing to say. They wanted me to fix the issue at hand, and they were telling me that I was being unreasonable, but refusing to do so, because it was clear that they needed the funds more than I did. And Jackie herself kept claiming that she was not emotionally strong enough to handle going out and working right now. Which is why she was trying to work on herself and heal from everything that she had been through so she could have a better future, and that I needed to be more understanding of that, instead of being so selfish and materialistic about everything. So now Ida for accepting financial help from my grandparents. Update 1. Hey. Thank you so much for the advice and comments. I'm keeping my parents and sister blocked, and I wasn't considering apologizing to them anyway. Reading the comments here and talking to a couple of my friends just reinforced my belief that I was right. I was having second thoughts, because I'm the kind of person who finds it very difficult to stay mad at people and hold grudges, but it has taken a lot for me to come to the realization that there is a difference between holding grudges and standing up for myself, and this decision that I have made to cut my family out of my life, that just standing up for myself, and I think it's the right thing to do. In the past they had always emotionally manipulated me, and taken advantage of the fact that no matter how often I picked fights with them, over completely valid things, I would still always come back to them because, well, they were my family and I always believed that they would have my back. Most kids are taught to believe that, and just like everyone else, that's what I thought too, but I was obviously wrong. Their love for me is extremely conditional, and I get that now, and I'm no longer willing to function according to those conditions. So they can call me all the names in the world that they want to, they can be as mad as they want to, it's never gonna make a difference to me anymore. Now my grandparents are going to be there at my graduation. And since I know for a fact that my parents won't show up, I'll still be happy that at least the people who actually do love me will be there for me. I've also finally started opening up about my family to my friends, which is something that I haven't done for a really long time. I didn't want to let my friends know that I do not have a perfect family, because it felt too personal to share. But then recently, I felt like I had to get this off my chest by talking to other people. And so I discussed this recent situation with a couple of my closest friends, and they were completely non-judgmental about it. They gave me really great advice, and reassured me that I was doing the right thing. So I had no reason to feel guilty, and I did not need to allow them to constantly treat me like a doormat anymore. So that was good for me, and now that I have finally found the courage to talk to people about how messed up my family is, I don't think I'm gonna be backing down after this anymore. I refuse to let people walk over me anymore now. Update 2. So my parents did show up at my graduation, unfortunately. It's insane how when I wanted them to come, they couldn't care less, but now that money is involved, they were suddenly quite eager to be there for me, and are referring to me as family and stuff. They didn't have the passes, so they couldn't get in, and I made it very clear to them that I would only be ready to speak to them after everything was over. So, once the graduation ceremony was done with and everything got wrapped up, a couple of hours later, my grandparents and I finally agreed to meet my parents. All of us met at a nearby hotel so that we could grab lunch, and I told my parents right in the beginning that I did not want them discussing anything that would lead to any sort of confrontation or drama, because I was in a really good mood and I did not want them to ruin it. But of course they had to go ahead and bring it up. As soon as we were seated, they started apologizing profusely and told us that they were really sorry for how they had treated me, and even Jackie was very apologetic. But she hadn't been able to come along because she had an interview today, since she had started applying to places after the confrontation with her grandparents, which had really made her realize how lazy she had been and how she had been taking everything for granted. My parents also acknowledged the fact that they had messed up really badly with me, and I have been right about everything, that they really had been terrible parents to both of us, but now they want a chance to fix that. And so they had come by to talk to me and my grandparents, so we could hear them out and give them a chance again. But before the grandparents could say anything, I told them that I appreciated the fact that they were feeling so apologetic, but I did not buy it because it seemed very insincere and disingenuous, given the circumstances. The fact that it took my grandparents cutting off their funds to make them realize that they had been wrong was not something that I was happy about, and they were really sorry. I would hope that they would wait for me to forgive them. I wasn't ready to give them a chance to come back into my life again. Right now, as of now, I just want to get a job, work, and build my own life separately from them. They had caused me a lot of stress and emotional pain in the past, and right now I just wanted some space away from them. I thought that I was being reasonable enough, and even my grandparents agreed, but my parents did not feel the same way. They started whining about how they had really changed their mind about how they had been treating me, and did not think that it was fine anymore. So as their child, it was my duty to forgive my parents, because they had always forgiven me whenever I messed up as a kid. I thought that example was laughable, because it was so bizarre that they were comparing my mistakes from when I was a literal child to the mistakes that they have consciously made and refused to acknowledge as adults. With kids, I told them that the bottom line was that they had messed up, and I was not ready to forgive them yet. So, if they were really sorry, they would give me my space, and if they refused to do so, then I would know that they were only doing this because they wanted to be on my grandparents' side and were doing all of this for the money. I was pretty blunt with them, and they knew that they couldn't manipulate their way out of this. So my mom started with the waterworks, hoping that maybe this would get me to be a little softer towards them. But I had dealt with this kind of melodrama for years, and it was ineffective against me. Now I just told her to cut it out since we were in a public space. And I told her that if she started making me uncomfortable, I would just leave along with my grandparents. So she continued to cry for a couple of minutes, accusing me of being heartless, and telling me that these years were real. But I did not buy it at all, and eventually I started to get up and leave, and that's when she stopped and requested me not to. Eventually, I guess, my parents realized that there was no way that they could talk their way out of this one, and by then the food had arrived. So they had a relatively quiet lunch, and then left after congratulating me without any real happiness in their voice. But it's fine, I don't really care about that, because I have my grandparents by my side, and that's all that matters. I also feel really relieved that I got to speak to my parents today, because I guess I got some kind of closure that I really needed. And I was also very proud of myself because I stood up with them, and I did not allow myself to get manipulated, like I usually do when it comes to my parents. So I would say that overall, it definitely was a pretty good day. Update 3. Hey. So, it's been a couple of days since I met my parents for lunch after the graduation ceremony, and I told them that I wanted to stay no contact, and now Jackie has started posting against me on social media. I find it really weird that she is the one who is so angry when she wasn't even there at lunch the other day. Her involvement in my life has always been very minimal because we don't get along. So, I don't understand why she feels entitled to say whatever she wants about and to me on a public platform and get away with it. Yesterday in the afternoon, she made some posts about how I was an ungrateful brat, and that she was ashamed of being related to me and stuff. I had only blocked their phone numbers. I had forgotten to block them on social media, so I could still see the post and stuff. She had cursed me out for how I had treated our parents, and it basically ended the statement by saying that if anybody who knew her bothered to speak to me or keep in touch with me after this, she would be cutting them out of her life. I found that post totally bizarre because so far, I think my parents have always done the bare minimum for me, but for her they've gone above and beyond. So I can understand why she treats them like they are infallible or something, but I'm sorry. I can't treat them like they are the best parents in the world, because to me they haven't even been good parents. And I commented on her post, explained my side of the situation, but she deleted that comment, so I was forced to make my own post, and right now we are in a social media war. She's been accusing me of being ungrateful to our parents, in spite of everything that they have done for me, and I'm just trying to tell my side of the story, which is the truth. Pretty much everything about the recent fight in the situation with my grandparents has been posted by her, but in a way that makes her and our parents look like the victims. I've been trying to clear things up, and everybody who knows us is very confused about whose side they should be on. I hate the fact that all of this is coming out in public, but I don't have another choice since we have a ton of friends in common, since we went to the same high school and are pretty close in age. And rather than reply to everybody personally, I think it would be better for me to just put it all out in public. It's really annoying and kind of embarrassing that this is happening, but I have to deal with it, so that's what I'm doing update for. Hi, so a lot of new information has come to light recently, and I think it's safe to say that I don't think I'll ever be forgiving my parents anytime soon, let alone going no contact for a couple of months. I think I'll be in no contact with them for the rest of my life, because of how unfair everything has been for me. It's been 3 days since Jackie made that post, and we've been fighting nonstop. It's been tiring, but I had decided that I was not going to stop until she did, and I'm very, very glad that I did, because the fight got to a point where she made a post to defend our parents, saying that they had done the exact same things for her as they had done for me, which was a total lie. So she was not more privileged than me at all, like I was pretending, and said that I was playing the victim because I wanted my grandparents to sympathize with me instead of her, even though she had been through a lot of trauma in the past. She brought up how she had also had to take out a student loan for college, and she would have been able to make the most of that opportunity too, had it not been for her awful friends, who had dumped her after using her for a couple of months in their band and giving her false hopes. She claimed that she had never been able to get over that, and that's why she had been finding it so difficult to get back to normal life and give up on those dreams. And that when one of her old bandmates decided to call her out and clarify that the rest of the band had always told her that she was only substituting because the girl that used to sing with them before they started college had moved away to Australia, so they had never told her that they planned on staying with her forever, even when they had made the decision to drop out of college so they could all pursue music full-time instead and go back. They had advised and even tried to talk Jackie out of it, because firstly, she wasn't even that good, And secondly, she had always just been a substitute, and they wanted somebody better and more serious about music to fill in. So, when they found their current vocalist, it had been a very easy decision for them to drop Jackie. And I don't think they had any reason to feel guilty about it either, because they had always been very clear about what they wanted, and Jackie was the one who had refused to listen to them or take them seriously. So dropping out of college had been Jackie's own decision, and it was a bad one, which is probably why she had twisted the story and left out so many important facts to make it seem like she was the victim. And the biggest lie of them all. She and my parents always said that she had taken out a student loan to pay for college, but the same bandmate who had called her out on this also mentioned that whatever she had said about taking out a student loan was also a total lie, because she had literally constantly bragged about how her parents were paying her way through college for her while they had to work part-time and hope for some well-paying gigs so they could start paying off their debts. After her bandmate called her out, Jackie obviously went back and deleted all her posts and pretended like the whole thing never even happened. But I know the truth now, and I'm never gonna be speaking to my family again. They have lied over and over again, and I'm done with it. My grandparents are also going to be doing the same thing and cutting my parents and Jackie out of their lives completely. I'm hurt and I'm furious, but this is exactly what I would expect from my parents, and I'm glad that I found out the truth now. So I don't waste any time on them in the future. I'm quite content with my life as it is. And from now on, my grandparents are the only family that I need.